Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's office hours. We'll give you a few minutes to settle in and join Chuck Bates and I this evening. My name is Dan Bissig, and super excited to be with you tonight. As always, we've got this little disclaimer to start things out here so that you understand that tonight we're going to be trying to answer your questions, talk you through some things, but just realize that this is not intended to give any tax, legal, or investment advice. For those kinds of situations, you're going to need to talk to a professional. So make sure to reach out to those people. Also, don't forget, one of the things that I sometimes slide in a little later is that by attending tonight or any of these open office hour times, that you can use a discount code, and I'll put that in the chat box for everybody right now. And what this will do is this will give you a discount of 15% on any kind of an upgrade that you might do in the future. Maybe you've got the free MyCAP software right now, the program that allows you to put in up to 3 colleges for free, and you're considering doing an upgrade to the scholar level or to the valedictorian level, or maybe even the white glove level if you really need some additional help on the process. But let me stop sharing my screen here. And Chuck, tonight's a big night. I mean, it's what, National Decision Day,
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to everybody online. If you've got seniors, you probably know where you're going by now.
I hope so. But you know what? Then again, I've got one student I'm still waiting to hear back from. I was on the phone with him yesterday, and he was pondering between 2 different schools and was having a really tough time making the decision. So who knows, man? It's pretty incredible that. But I mean, today's the day, according to the colleges, let's be very clear, right? Yeah. Because it was officially known as National Decision Day across the board with everybody until about maybe 5-6 years ago when NACAC, the National Association of College Admission Counselors, got sued by the Department of Justice, who came after them and said, you can't do that. You can't force people to make a binding decision without giving them the ability to talk to and negotiate with other schools. So, but here we are today, right?
Yeah, and I've got a couple students that are still in appeals mode or decision mode, and some of them are athletes trying to decide: do I take a scholarship or do I take a financial aid award package? And where do I want to play ball or whatever the sport is? But yeah, it's exciting. And parents, I hope you guys feel great about your situations and that you're proud of your students. You guys, if you've made it this far, you're doing an amazing job as parents. Raising kids can be challenging, as I found out with one of my own today. A little bit of a hiccup in the Bates family, but we're fighting through, and we're going to answer some questions for y'all tonight.
Yeah. And by the way, to that extent, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A section for us. One other thing we ought to talk about too, Chuck, obviously we're also at the end of the appeal process, other than, like you said, some of those that are carrying over, and where that could come into play. How about those students that are still, maybe they've already decided to accept an offer to a college, but they still have those colleges out there that they're on the wait list, and trying to decide if they come through, what are they going to do?
Yeah, those are tough decisions. I work in personal finance, and I tell everybody, it's 80% personal and 20% finance. And, college is very similar. It's 80%, emotional, social, academic, and 20% like what mom's choice, dad's choice, my choice. There's a lot of moving parts in it.
Yeah, there sure are. And by the way, folks, don't forget that we're recording this tonight, so you'll have a copy of it. It'll be sent out in the next day or two, just with some bullet points of what we talked about tonight. But let's see. It looks like we got some questions rolling in, Chuck.
Yeah, I'll take the first one, swing at the first one if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Question about community college transfer. Apparently, a big university didn't give credit for community college courses taken by transfer students. According to the university, the course taken was not up to university standards. I think university professors think they teach better than community college professors and reject credit for the course. Is community college a waste of time? So I think the short answer is no, it's not a waste of time. but I think it comes with its own set of challenges and due diligence, right? As you're taking classes, you kind of need to know where you're going to transfer. You probably need to reach out to them in advance and find out what classes transfer, which ones don't, and why not. We know for a fact that the average cost of a transfer between regular universities is between $15,000 and $30,000. And that's typically, there's some explicit costs, right? Moving from Chicago and Northwestern to Palo Alto to go to Stanford, there's a cost associated with that. But it's exactly this case. There may be a course that doesn't transfer from school to school or from program to program. So I would never say community college is a waste of time. I know people who have successfully navigated that and knocked out a huge chunk of credits at a much lower cost. But like I said, you got to do the due diligence and make sure you have an idea of, well, what you're taking and whether it'll transfer both to the school and to the program. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's good, Chuck. And the other thing I will say, there are some states out there. So I live in one of those states, in the state of Kentucky, where the governor actually signed legislation that says that if a student gets a C or higher in any courses taken at a community college, they are guaranteed to transfer to the four-year public institutions. And so, I mean, that's a win because, you know, the price tag for them to go there and take those, I mean, it's interesting. They're taking the same English class that they would take at that four-year institution, you know. Again, like Chuck said, the one differentiator is if they're going to go out of state or if they're going to go to a private school, that could change all the dynamics. But the good news is a lot of these colleges have a transferability calculator on their websites. So, you know, you ought to at least go and plug in those numbers and see what happens out there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it applies only to community college, actually. Here in Texas, like UT has what they call the CAP program, and it allows you to start at like UT Arlington or UT San Antonio and eventually transfer to UT Austin. But what people often don't realize that I come across is it only guarantees you, assuming you meet the requirements and keep up your grades and whatnot, it only guarantees you access or admittance into the liberal arts school. Or general studies program, not into engineering or business and so on. That's essentially the same process as a transfer from another school. So you can get into UT Austin, but you may not get into the desired program. So same thing, you know, when you're going through some of those programs, make sure how it applies to the area of study you want to be in as well.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, next question. What do you think of this strategy? Kid is applying to an out-of-state public school. The whole family is moving to that state, but won't establish residency for a year. Should we take a gap year, wait until we establish residency, and avoid paying out-of-state tuition? Our EFC is high, so no need-based aid is expected. Probably will get merit aid, but probably not as much as the in-state kids. So interesting question. I mean, and you know, and this question about how you can qualify for in-state tuition in an out-of-state school comes up all the time. It sounds like you've done your homework, by the way. Good for you. You realize that the school, specifically probably through the state legislature, has specific requirements as to what you need to do as far as your residency in a particular state before you can qualify for those in-state rates. You know, whether your student takes a gap year or not, that's a personal call. You know, the thing I would absolutely do if I were in your shoes is have the student apply to the school, get accepted to the school, and then take the gap year so that there's an understanding and maybe even have a conversation with that school to make them aware of what's coming up. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, I can tell you a few years ago, there was a situation where a family in my area, the daughter applied to an in-state school, which was the University of Kentucky, and then their family got transferred to North Carolina because of our dad's job. But because of the fact that she had applied while they still lived in the state, they were able to get in-state tuition throughout the 4 years that she was going to school there. So again, do your homework. The gap year, I still think it's a good idea to apply, get accepted. Because here's the other part of it. What if you're going to a school that is just ridiculously tough to get into, even as a public institution, right? I mean, you hear about this all the time with some of the NC schools or the Michigan schools or other, California schools. I mean, my goodness, or the Texas schools,
Texas,
right?
yeah.
I mean, and and even, I mean, quite frankly, there's a lot of big flagship public universities out there that are tough to get into, even if you're in state. So better that you get accepted or the student gets accepted and then gives you some options that you can have that conversation. So that would be my advice.
I think that's an outstanding answer. And what do we got here? Hi, I'm a parent of a junior in North Carolina. Is financial aid mutually exclusive process from the admission process? Are there turnaround times similar to those of admission times, 2 to 3 months? So there are schools that are need aware, so they may consider that in admitting your student. I don't know for sure, if you're talking about University of North Carolina or other schools, but there are schools that are need aware and it can impact admissions. Are the turnaround times similar of those admissions times? Well, I think next year especially is going to be different because you're going to be able to apply when the Common App opens early in August.
Right.
And then the financial aid application, which normally opens October 1st, we think is going to be delayed till December or January. I don't think anybody's exactly certain, but it's going to be, we're pretty certain it's going to be after October. So you won't have to necessarily worry about it at the exact time of applying. And your turnaround time on financial aid will be around spring break. Typically, people get their financial aid awards around March, give or take, depending on the schools. So you should have your admissions information well before that. If you're concerned about financial situation impacting or not impacting application, if you've got a high EFC, and you want to go to a school regardless, I've had people complete it early and hey, I'm willing to pay full price. And then I've also had people complete their application, wait till they get an acceptance later, and then complete the FAFSA. So it can go both ways. I'm sure there's probably something I'm leaving out. Dan, anything to chime in with there?
No, I mean, truly, you said it right on. And the only thing I would say is just do realize that early action, early decision, rolling admissions, regular decision, all those things can also have an impact on it. But without a doubt, the biggest thing that's going to impact everything this year is the delay with the FAFSA until sometime in December. Now, the CSS profile is still going to open up October the 1st. And so for colleges that require that and or that, where it's the more selective colleges in general, it's just going to be an interesting time, as to how everything shakes out there. So, back to what Chuck said, it absolutely depends on each school as far as what's going to happen there, the timing. But I mean, his timing's right on. So
when we talk about need aware schools,
Mm-hmm.
where do you think the best source to get that information is? You think common data set, or you think experience?
I would probably do common data set. The other thing that I would say is, you can Google it and there are some lists that have been created by folks out there, but you got to be careful. Make sure that you do some research. Worst case scenario, do what I call the Columbo technique, which is call the financial aid office up and just, don't tell them your name, don't tell them your kid's name for sure. And just, play it off that you're just kind of wondering, are you a school that is need aware or need blind when it comes to, taking financial aid into to consideration. So. Okay, next question. On your website, if I have to report 2 households due to divorced family, do I enter all members of both households in my profile? Okay, so first of all, let's kind of walk this through. So on the MyCAP software, if you're using it, you really need to have 2 separate MyCAP accounts. You need to have one for the custodial parent and one for the secondary parent. Why? Because number one, we don't want to confuse the numbers. Number two, when you're applying for schools that are FAFSA only schools, they're going to use just the parent who provides the most financial benefit to the child moving forward. And you need to know what that student aid index is. By the way, let's not forget that's what it's going to be called now from the federal side. The student aid index number is. Now, the CSS profile is a different story. The CSS profile and that's why you want to have the two MyCAP accounts, is going to take both incomes into consideration, and also both assets. And so here's kind of the unfortunate part of that story is if mom and dad are also remarried, then you could have four incomes, four sets of assets that are coming into play with that particular school. So you have to just be careful and make sure that you run the numbers and kind of know what you're getting into in that case.
And you can go on the CSS website, you can just put in CSS custodial, type in CSS custodial in Google, and it will bring up a list, and you can toggle, do they count both parents or only the custodial parent? So that's an option to get a little more information depending on what schools you're interested in.
Yeah, that's such a great idea there, Chuck, because I mean, what you're saying, it's that whole thing about whether the non-custodial parent even needs to show up, and there are definitely some colleges that are out there like that. In fact, what is it? UNC Chapel Hill is a school, for example, that does not require the non-custodial parents' information, which is a winner. I mean, that's a big deal for a family where, depending upon what your situation looks like, you're trying to work through that.
I just put the link into the chat. If you click on that, you can go to the second to last column and toggle that to get the information.
Yeah.
All right. Did we wrap that one up, Dan?
Yeah, we're good.
Tied a bow on it. All right, here we go. If a student takes a year doing classes at a regional campus, charges lower tuition than the main campus. That's what I was referring to with like UT Austin, UT Arlington, then moves to main campus second year. Are they treated as a transfer student for merit purposes? So my experience, and Dan, you can tell me what it is. Whatever, I've not had a lot of students get significant merit awards when they're going this route. So if you start at UT Arlington, I've had students get need-based awards, but I've yet to come across somebody get any kind of merit award. I don't know about you, Dan.
Yeah, I don't see much of that either, but I've been told even within the MyCAP software that we do have some transfer scholarships that are reflected in there. And again, I will tell you also that in my state, there are indeed some transfer scholarships. And we're talking about top students here, by the way, folks. Let's be very clear. Just like freshmen getting into a college, it's going to be the top students that are getting rewarded with those merit scholarships, the same way with any transfer opportunities that might be provided. So key, do your homework. Don't assume anything. Don't ever assume anything. Make sure that you make a connection with the admissions office at the other location. Understand the reciprocity process when it comes from one school to the next, and then ask them straight up, are there scholarship opportunities that exist, so that you don't go into it, expecting one thing and getting a nasty surprise in the end.
If for the person who asked this question, if you've already applied and are planning going this route, I'd be interested to throw in there, did you get a merit-based award in the process? I'd be curious.
All right, so next question. What are current financial aid and scholarship opportunities for Latino and Black American students? Well, they are absolutely the same as everybody else out there. I mean, it's quite frankly, the one advantage that you sometimes find is, well, number one, there are definitely some scholarships that are based specifically on ethnicity. There are also scholarship opportunities that are based 100% on financial need. And so, and that's kind of across the board. But what I will also tell you is there are definitely some schools that are doing a really great job of trying to help students in both of these areas to afford college, to be able to provide those types of dollars out there. And so what I would suggest is two things. I mean, you may be surprised by the number of private scholarships that are out there that focus truly on both Latino and Black American students. So I would go out there and I would Google things. I would do some research on things like goingmerry.com, with going and then MERRY.com. Also FastWeb and Scholarship 360. I mean, these are just some websites that give some other opportunities out there. And, it's really about being proactive about looking for these types of scholarships. So many times what I think happens is students kind of sit back and they think, oh, they'll come to me. Well, the reality is, there's a chance for you to get out there and find private scholarships. And then when it comes to the colleges that you're applying to, do searches. I mean, there's opportunities like that as well. Even within the MyCAP software, by the way, we have a private scholarship search tool that's in there. And there's the ability for you to designate certain types of things like that. Plus, you will find in some of the colleges that they're very specific to providing money for Latino and Black American students. So be proactive about looking for those types of things.
And I've found, at least in Houston, where I volunteer a lot in the high schools, if you talk to the counselors at the school, they know they have a lot of those that information available. And also in Houston, there's a website called theharn.org, THEHARN.org. It stands for Houston Area Recruiting Network, and it's recruiters for all the colleges nationwide that live in Houston and recruit students from here to go there. Those are going to be some of your best resources. If you can make a friend there with the recruiter in your neighborhood, you never know if that person's going to be reading your application, maybe potentially advocating for you. So I would encourage you to take advantage of the recruiting days at your schools. For the ones you're interested in or your students interested in, become best friends with those people. It can only help. Yeah,
I went ahead and put a couple of those scholarship websites in the
nice.
Chat for everybody too. So, okay.
In the MyCAP tool, there seems to be a decision getting made by the software when one adds colleges to the list about which merit non-need scholarships to include in the affordability info showing. Wondering how the tool determines which merit scholarships to identify as likely for the students does depend on the student profile info provided. Exactly. I'm going to see, I don't know if I can share my screen, but I'm going to try. Can you guys see that?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to show a couple things real quick. Your profile here is where that information will be, and under personal info. And you always want to make sure it's 100% complete to get the best information. A really smart guy I know who's also on this call says, good info in, good info out, garbage in, garbage out. So you want to put in accurate information as much as possible. And if you scroll down, you'll see a section for GPA, weighted GPA, SAT, ACT scores. And those are really going to be what's important. And then that's cross-referenced against how a school's business model works and their scholarships. So let's see if I have, well, LSU would be a good one. So the first thing you'd want to look at is admissions. And you can see here, it has the SAT verbal range, math range. So what that is the median 50%. So that means if you're below the high number, or excuse me, above the high number, you're in the top 25% of historical incoming freshmen. If you're in the range, you're in the kind of 50 percentile. And if you're below that, you're in the bottom 25%. And that's for SAT and ACT. And then I thought they had GPA, did I? Oh yeah, GPA is at the top. So that's how you would know. And then once you've seen that, some of these scholarships, if they're automatic or even competitive, will have the minimum requirements. So that's how it determines whether or not it's estimating one of those scholarships. So I hope that it gives you a quick summary of MyCAP and answers that question.
That's good. The follow-up statement, which is dealing with the divorced families, that says, so does that mean I have to set up 2 accounts with 2 fees? Don't forget that you can set up a MyCAP account for free. You can, and what it does is it allows you to put in all the financial details for that second parent. Just use one that's going to be the primary where you're building your college list, and use the secondary just to run the federal SAI and the institutional CSS profile. Okay, that'll really make it give you the numbers that you need. So no, you don't necessarily have to pay the 2 fees, just use the freebie. Also, the other one, it says I reviewed the non-CSS list, but they are very expensive. Yep. Anytime you're looking at CSS profile schools, they're going to be the top most expensive colleges out there. However, realize that those top schools also are the same schools that you'll see listed that they will cover 100% of need. So the challenge there is, can your student get admitted to that particular school. But if they can, and you have a large financial need, then the money will come with it. So let me give you an example. This year, I helped a family appeal a financial aid offer that they'd received from the University of Chicago, which would be on that list, by the way. And in that particular case, they originally were turned down for any financial aid other than the $5,500 federal direct student loan, of which $3,500 of it was subsidized. And so what ended up happening, though, was we went back, I worked with the family, we provided additional tax documents, additional details about the business. And don't you know, that family ended up getting not $5,500, but $56,000 in total financial aid when all the, when everything cleared. And so in that particular case, it really came down to them having everything that they needed and being able to provide documentation to make it work. So, just know that it can happen if you've got a reason that the college considers, for, asking for that type of an appeal. In other words, providing them what they need so that they can say yes instead of saying no in that particular case.
Awesome. For the folks out there who are asking about the harn.org, I just tried to log on and it looks like their domain may have expired. I'm certain that's right because when I Google it, it comes up, but I'll reach out to them and see if something's changed. But just, wherever your local metro area, Detroit area, recruiting network, or Cincinnati area recruiting network, and see what comes up. I'm sure you'll find some. So I apologize that I threw out something that's not working, but I suspect it'll also get fixed. So just be patient. If a parent receives personal injury, pain, and suffering compensation, is it counted as an asset? So I guess I don't know. I've never had this question before, so I don't know the specific answer, but I would assume if it flows through to your AGI, it's absolutely counted. If not, it's possible it could be counted as untaxed income, but I would have to look at the list of things that untaxed income still counts. And I think that's changing a lot with the SAI formula. So my question is, I'm not sure, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Yeah. The other thing I would say to you too, it also depends on where the money's sitting after you take it. Okay. Yeah. If it's sitting in your checking account or your bank or your savings account or investments, yes, it absolutely will count. From the federal standpoint, it counts at 5.64%, and from the institutional, it counts at 5%. So, that's the unfortunate part about that, depending upon where it's sitting after the fact.
Thank you for correcting that, Dan, because I read that is asset, but in my mind, I was thinking income. So that's why I went the tax route. Thank you.
No, but it could be, truly, it could be both parts of it. You don't know how the money's distributed to them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what we've got here. For dual enrollment credits, any suggestions on navigating through the list building process? I'm already aware of transferology and Googling school policy on dual enrollment credits. My daughter will have potentially 75 semester credits to transfer in. Wow. Woo. That's some serious credit hours. How about potential to actually schedule 300 and 400 level courses as a first year student? Any other tips? Well, number one, kudos to your daughter for doing what she's doing. I mean, it's incredible. Shoot, she's going to be, think of it this way. An incoming student is already considered a sophomore if they've got 24 credit hours in most cases. So if she's coming in with 20 or with 75 credit hours, she'll already be considered at least a sophomore, coming into that type of a case. So, I guess I'm trying to figure out what exactly we can do to help you with that question now, because your daughter's pretty dynamite as far as what she's doing. And, maybe what you're also asking is trying to understand how the college is going to react to that. And what you're really doing in this case is, unfortunately, that's where you're going to have a one-on-one conversation with an admissions person because of those 300 and 400 level classes. That's what I would say. So.
Yeah, I've had a few students with a lot. I mentor for a group called Emerge, and my student mentee 2 years ago, he's at Northeastern. He had, I don't know how many credits, but it was well over 20. and at Northeastern, they only considered, I want to say, about a third to a half of them. And it was helpful, but he said in hindsight, if I knew I was going to Northwestern, I wouldn't have taken all those AP exams and different things that didn't ultimately help me. So yeah, I think Dan's exactly right. If you know a real specific school you're most interested in, beat that door down and get as much information as you can.
Yeah, because you know what, Chuck, what you said is so interesting. It would really stink, wouldn't it? And there's a college in my state right now that gives absolutely no credit for APs. So the answer is you show up at the door and you start, and you've got a 4-year track record that you're going to run on, and that's kind of the way that some of the big boys play as far as what they're doing there. So you got to be super careful with it.
All right. So what package do I need in order to get order for your help with appeals? How much of the appeal help is included in the package, and is there anything extra that needs to be paid? So there's, Dan, correct me if I group any of these names, but there's the freemium, the scholar, and the valedictorian. Free, you just get the 3 schools in our package. The scholar, you can put in as many schools as you like, and the valedictorian is the package where you'll get the 1 free hour or an hour is included. I shouldn't say it's free because you're paying, but an hour is included with one of our experts, and they will guide you through the appeal. They'll listen to your situation based on the profile you put in CAP and any award letters you upload. The more prepared you are, the better we're going to be able to assist. And there's nothing else that needs to be paid there. So if you're really prepared in your setup and have all the award letters in there, I think one of our pros will be able to help you pretty far. They might even give you a template or something to suggest, or have you write the letter and be willing to review it once you've written it and offer a little bit of feedback. So I hope that answers your question. And Dan, I'll let you chime in if I mislabeled any of our
No, you did great. The only thing I was going to say, and I'm going to use a line from our friend Peg, is if there's any chance that you think you're going to need an hour consult in the future, whether that's for maybe reviewing your college list, whether it's helping you with the FAFSA or the CSS profile, helping you with an appeal, it's a no-brainer, as Peg would say, to go ahead and do the upgrade to the valedictorian, because you're never going to beat the price. The reason being is that you're getting the software for an entire year, plus you're getting that 1-hour consult for $299, less that discount code that we gave you tonight, the OH15, which drops it down, I'll tell you exactly, to $254.15. And just so that you're aware of this, if you later on decide that you want to do a 1-hour consult, it's $299. Again, if you happen to be listening to a webinar, less that 15% discount, but that's for just that 1 hour. So think about it. You can get both the software and a 1-hour consult for the same price as a 1-hour consult will charge you in the future. So just keep it in mind. That's kind of the only sales pitch we'll give you on that. We obviously are here to help you. I will tell you that I don't want you to get all caught up and think, oh, Dan or Chuck are going to help us find $56,000 worth of extra money per year. Okay. But look, it's a victory for both of us and for all the other CAP experts if we help families get an extra $2,000 a year or $3,000. I mean, it's more than justified the fee that you pay. And so if you happen to be in one of those situations where you're thinking, my goodness, this could be something, we happen to be one of those families that has some tight finances, or, we're really worried about where things are today compared to where they were 2 years ago. I mean, let's not forget that when it comes to the financial aid, they are judging you based on a 2-year look back. So they're looking at the tax return from 2 years back. So for those of you, of course, that are seniors, they were looking at your 2021 tax return. For those future seniors that we've got on maybe this presentation that are going to graduate in 2024, they're looking at 2022. And then it also comes down to whether there's any strategies and things that you might be able to do, as you're considering moves for the future if you've got younger children. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's a good point. And Dan, I started writing a blog post today of all the kind of errors, mistakes, or idiosyncratic things that I saw this year. So as simple as a decimal point getting switched to a number that increased EFC from 30,000 to 700,000, but they didn't know why, to land being misclassified, to student with biological living parents getting classified as independent because of her situation. I mean, these are all things that we've seen and might be able to help with. And also keep an eye out for my blog post because I'm excited about this one.
It's called the human element, isn't it? It's the human
Yeah,
element.
exactly.
Yep. Human error happens, man. It does. I know.
And I mean, I can speak for Dan. I know he lives and dies with every appeal, and that's the kind of, we wouldn't do this if we didn't care. So
right.
I think it's well worth it. All right. Thoughts on new rules for co-owner of a business, a professional service company. So my assumption is that's going to be something like an accountant or, potentially an attorney, a bookkeeper, a financial advisor, where a lot of it is, your knowledge of an industry, and there's not a lot of assets or widgets involved in the business. And I guess the first thing I would say is always err on a conservative business value. I mean, it's very difficult to value that. Number two, let's just say you sold a business. Well, now you're trading the business for your income. So if you sell your business, does your income go to zero? I mean, that's a weird question that I think nobody's really considered in this. And then the last thing I'd say is, if the business does have assets, whether that's real estate or cash in the bank or investments or things like that, that's going to be the minimum value you can give for that. So unless you've had a full-on business appraisal by a business valuation expert, I would say, err on the side of caution and think about it in terms of, if you quit doing that job, what would the business be worth the next day? And I realize, there may be some risk to that, and you have to be able to support your answer and back it up with some kind of documentation. But again, I think it's a very hard question to answer. And I would, as somebody who works in financial services and works with a lot of business owners, I've only come across 2 out of the 100 families we work with that have businesses that have true expert-based valuations done. So.
Yeah, the other thing that's obviously a toughie on this is a professional services company, which means it's you. You are the company. You may have some very low tangible items that could be sold off, but the fact is, if you walk out the door, do you have any value to be able to sell that business to anybody else? I mean, it's something to think about. We all like to think that all the hours that we spent building our businesses, that there's a value to it, but somebody's got to be willing to pay it. So let's see here. For schools that say they don't offer merit aid, do schools have access to private scholarships that they can offer to students as merit aid? If yes, is any of that data published and accessible to the public? So here's the thing. There are a number of private colleges that are super duper hard to get into, the Ivies and some of the Ivy wannabes, that do not give out any merit scholarships, and they do not suddenly find other scholarships for your students on the outside. So the answer would be no. It really becomes your job, as a family or students, to go and find other scholarship opportunities from other private sectors, and just understand that if in that case with those schools, so here's the thing, if they don't give out any merit scholarships, what do they give out? They give out need-based financial aid, and they give out a lot of it, depending upon what your family's financial circumstances are. But you do have to know that if you give or get, I should say, if you earn additional private scholarships out there, that can be taken against you. And so colleges will indeed, in some cases, reduce the free money by outside free money that you've received. So do everything that you can to really do the research on the schools. Do not go in assuming that a college is going to give your high-flying students scholarship money. That's to me, it's by far the most powerful part of the tool that we have within MyCAP, is it takes away a lot of the mystery. It's going to show you whether or not your student is going to qualify for merit scholarships at these schools. And if we put likely on there, that means it's a projection. And so, your student still has to finish the game. They've got to get across the finish line when it comes to their grades and things like that. And, hopefully you'll even get a little bit more depending upon the circumstances that are going on. But, just be careful with that.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I volunteer with Emerge, which here in Houston, it helps low income, first time college bound students get into highly selective universities. And I've had a number of them become Posse scholars. In Texas, there's also the Terry Foundation. So those are outside scholarships, but typically are going to be only available to people maybe on the lower end of the income spectrum, or different circumstances and situations. But those will transfer to highly selective schools that don't offer merit aid, but it's not from the school directly. So, and I threw there the foundations in the chat if you want to look them up.
Cool.
Is it too late now after May 1st to apply for scholarship money? So this is an interesting question. I would start with about 85% of all scholarship dollars come from the institutions themselves. So when you're shopping for school and building your school list, you need to look at schools that are going to give you that money potentially upfront, whether it's need-based or merit-based aid. After that, you can look for all the private scholarships you want. What I would tell you is they all come with their own different deadlines. Some are more consumer friendly and some are very professional and deadline oriented. I think you're going to look at between 5 and 15 hours of work to get between probably $2,000 and $5,000 in most cases. So my answer is it's probably never too late, but the search gets harder the later in the year, and you're most definitely going to have more of a challenge getting the big dollars from the institutions themselves.
Oh yeah, in fact, the big dollars already walked out the door.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is especially if we're talking about schools, private schools in particular, that where they're using their own endowment funds to be able to work through handing out the money. A lot of that money's already out of here. And I'm not saying that too, that there couldn't be a situation where maybe, again, if you've been waitlisted, that you may be able to look at some options there. But that also depends on what the financial aid offer looks like when it comes rolling in. There is nothing worse than a college that says, oh yeah, you can appeal to our school, but it's not going to be until late May or June before we even take a look at those things. And by the way, that does happen out there, folks. So it's pretty scary to think about that. Okay. Chuck, this next one is way too detailed for us to really talk about. So I appreciate you doing all the typing. And I know it's a lot of work for you to type in these details, but you really need to schedule a meeting with us to go into detail about the question that's come up. It's asking about a particular family situation, folks. So that really needs to be a 1-hour consult that you can set up with one of us by just clicking on the support at collegeaidpro.com, or even better on your MyCAP, just schedule it up top. Better answer, why go to support? Just go to the expert, schedule with an expert button that's on there. Make sure to use your OH15 discount code, and that'll give you 15% off of being able to do that. Okay.
Yeah, and there is one question I see highlighted is, what is your experience with a sophomore year appeal? And I don't want to get too deep into it, but my experience is not very good. So I don't want to discourage you, but again, you need to do as much of the work as you can when you're a freshman. Once you've already been in there a year, they've kind of got you. You've lost a lot of your leverage. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. This next one, since it pertains to me here, it says, can I request Dan as the person to talk to? The answer is yes. Actually, so just so you know, when you go in and you schedule a meeting, all you need to do is you'll see that there's a kind of a toggle list of all of us, whether it's Chuck. And by the way, Chuck is incredible with his knowledge of everything Texas. He's my go-to guy from Texas, but and financial planning. But the thing I want you to know is when you go in there, you can absolutely pick the person. Then that's just a matter of figuring out what their hours look like as far as what you can do. Okay.
This one, a merit scholarship cannot be reduced by outside private scholarships, right? I would say wrong. It depends on the school.
It does.
I think each school can operate however they want. A lot of times they will ask you if you've got outside private scholarships. Um, you know, so it might be worth asking or going to a school's website and looking into that. I know I had a student who went to Bryn Mawr, and you can actually go to their website, and there's a section that shows how they treat outside scholarships, how it impacts merit aid, how it impacts need-based aid, if it offsets the parent contribution, the student contribution. So it's going to be on a school by school basis, but I would say it depends on the school, and it can be reduced.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, one of the places that we've seen it is where they've even reduced like grant money, need-based aid, because they suddenly see this. And by the way that the policy reads is that you are required to report all outside scholarships to the admissions and financial aid office at every college. And there's a reason for that, folks. What they're basically saying is you can't, or you shouldn't. Well, let me put it this way. The college cannot give out any more money than the cost of attendance to go to school there. And so if they, with them then taking into consideration those scholarships, then, that will indeed reduce or could reduce what's going on there. So pretty important.
And on that note, something Dan and I were talking about right before this call started was taxability of scholarship dollars. And if it's used for something other than God, I get tongue tied so easy. I'm sorry.
Qualified expenses.
Thank you. Qualified educational expenses. No wonder they want to pick you and not me.
Stop it. Stop it.
Qualified education expenses, it can be counted as income and taxed later. So it can impact, young students, especially if they have any instance of independence or just lots of things that can go into that.
Yeah, that's true. Sure can.
All right. Is this next one me? Here is a link to California Student Aid Commission, which outlines family size for 24-25. Matt said the legal separation required for 24-25 FAFSA is to be determined. Anything more, So I apologize, but I'm not going to log in and read the summary. So I'm very sorry about that. If you want to schedule an hour and you pick me, if you send me this link before, I promise I will read it and have an answer for you before we start. But the separation rules, I think, are becoming stricter as we go forward as a general rule, that you will have to, actually be separated or be able to provide some documentation around that. But beyond that, I don't know, anything specific to California.
Yeah, and I would also say, Chuck, too, what I've kind of heard as well is that it's going to have to be a formal separation.
Yeah.
And without a doubt, you can't live under the same roof, but there's going to have to be paperwork that confirms that that's the way that it is. And you have to understand why this is a big deal, folks. And you may find this surprising, but some families like to kind of skirt the gray area when it comes to this whole thing. It's the same reason that there's the change that's going on with divorce right now. Same way with separation is they know that some families sometimes creatively find a way to be separated for a span of years, and do things that they do. So I'm not saying that you are one of those. Please do not shoot arrows at me through the screen. But I'm just saying to you, you have to be careful because it's going to definitely be the formal side of things that they're looking for. So formal separation. Okay, let's see. The next one, net price calculators state their calculations for self-employed are not completely accurate. If we are self-employed and the net price calculators state that we don't qualify for need-based aid, what would our next steps be to determine our accurate EFC? It's a perplexing issue, isn't it, folks? I mean, it really is. Let's also not forget too that a lot of times net price calculators are based on numbers that are sometimes 2, even 3 years old. And, whether these colleges are all going to scramble and get their net price calculators up to code with what the new regulations are by the time things roll out for this new school year, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be kind of the wild, wild west for a period of time here when it comes to the way they're going to handle this. The other thing that you have to know, just so we're clear, they don't have a way to police separated, divorced, the value of your small businesses, any of that kind of stuff. So how they're going to determine that, the only way I can figure it is that they may require additional information to be submitted if a verification is required, for example. I don't know, Chuck, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, so what I think is going to happen ultimately is the reason they say, in my opinion, that it's not completely accurate is because if you have a small business, they're going to go through and ask for the schedules on your return. So Schedule C, Schedule A, Schedule E for real estate, just different things. And they're going to look at some of the deductions you've taken. And even though the IRS allowed them, they may discount them and add that some of those dollars back to your EFC or SAI. So they want to look and get a picture of your business and kind of understand, hey, could this thing have been far more profitable based on the expenses we see them taking? Should we disallow any of them? Things like that. So yeah, it certainly doesn't feel fair when that's happening, and the only way they're going to do that is by requesting your schedules and your full tax return, maybe even the worksheets and some of the stuff. But that is my guess as to why they're going to say it's not accurate. But on the other hand, I would say if you use the College Aid Pro software and you're pretty accurate with what your adjusted gross income is, the amount of tax you pay, and if you don't have excessive deductions in your business, I would guess that the CAP EFC is going to be pretty close, and then you could pretty accurate, I should say, and you could compare that to what you get out of the net price calculator from a given school. I don't know if that helps, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's good. Let's see, is there a handy place to find deadlines and timeframes for direct loans, unsubsidized? Not sure how much lead time, et cetera, is involved. Interesting question. So, I mean, first of all, remember that the kinds of loans that are being talked about here are the federal direct student loans, and they come in two different forms. There's the subsidized, which is where the federal government covers the interest rate on that during the time the student's in college, and then the unsubsidized, where there's interest being added to those loans. The one thing I will tell you is on the MyCAP software at the very, very bottom, if you go to the dashboard, at the very, very bottom, there are descriptions that talk about the federal loans. Also talk about sources for private loans, if that's something else that you're considering doing. And so I would definitely tap into those resources, to be able to take a look at that. When it comes to the lead time, one of the things that's really critical on these loans is that, so let's just deal with the freshman scholarship. As I think we've mentioned in prior conversations, it's a use it or lose it, which means, if you get $5,500 the freshman year, they'll give you $2,750 in the fall, $2,750 in the spring. And so in order to get those monies, what has to happen is that the student has to go online. They have to watch a series of videos. They have to take a little quiz along the way, and then they have to sign the master promissory note, which then puts them in a position to then be able to qualify for that money. So from a timing, it's all about getting it done as soon as possible. As soon as you've accepted and decided that the student is going to a particular school, you want to get that finished so that's off your to-do list. So that would be my advice.
I did throw a link to the studentaid.gov with the FAFSA deadlines and different things in there. It may not answer your exact question, but if you scroll through there, it will likely answer just about any question related to deadlines that might come up.
That's good.
And thank you. If you have testimonial or encouraging words, we really appreciate that. You can, if you want to send an email, you can send it to support@collegeaidpro.com. Any other ways they can do that, Dan?
No, that would be awesome. Thank you.
That's very kind, and we greatly appreciate that. All right. Do we find out information about merit scholarships just online? How does one find out how the school gives out scholarships? So the software is your best place to start. I don't think there's a better source than MyCAP out there. I think it's a great way to start. So, you can sign up for free and get your 3 top schools and dive in that way. Beyond that, then I think it really does start with calls to the admissions and financial aid office, schools' websites, stuff like that. Those are going to be the best way. You can also use Google and do common data set in whatever school you're interested in. That's going to bring up a very hard to read document, but the information's out there. But again, I think MyCAP is the way to go, and you're not going to find a better, more organized source for that.
Totally agree. Yeah. Yeah. Why waste your time searching for all kinds of things when it's right in your hands? If colleges won't update their net price calculator and the FAFSA is delayed until December of 2023, how's a family supposed to make an informed decision on ED applications? Boy, do we ever feel your pain. It's true. It's a monster of a problem. By the way, not just for you, the families, but the colleges as well. They are really, they're going to obviously put a whole lot more emphasis on the CSS profile. I mean, without a doubt, and so just so that you know, the vast majority of colleges, when they make their decisions, are going to base it on, again, the expected family contribution that comes up on that CSS profile. But there are some exceptions. There are some colleges that will indeed entertain what the FAFSA's student aid index number is going to show in the future. So it's going to be perplexing. I mean, for those schools, and also the schools that do early action as well, because a lot of times they like to roll out their admissions decisions and their financial aid decisions around the same time. And so we're just going to have to see. This is going to be kind of an unprecedented year for all of that.
Good stuff. Hey, we got about 4 minutes left. So we'll try and knock out a few of these real quick, and maybe not quite as long-winded as I normally am, but some summer camps are highly selective, summer science, RSI, etc. How important are summer camps for selective university admissions? I definitely think it can play a role. I'll give an example of UT Austin here in Texas. I helped a student who had a 1520 SAT, a 4.0, a 2-year all-state choir, and he wanted to get into the engineering school. He was not in the top 6% of his class, and because he didn't have any demonstrated interest in engineering through camps, networking with engineers, things like that, he did not get accepted to UT. So, let alone the engineering program. So, I think it can be very important, and it varies school to school.
Yeah, the only thing I will warn you about, if your intention is that you think that it's going to help your student get into Stanford or Harvard or Yale or one of the Ivies, just be careful, because there are a lot of these, what they refer to as pay-to-play camps that are out there. And unfortunately, just because it's got the school name on it does not give you leverage in that particular case to get into schools of that caliber. I'm just telling you, it doesn't. It's really going to come down to a holistic review of that application with all the other things that the students are doing, their essay, their letters of recommendation, all those kinds of things, especially when you've got this incredible number of applications that are going into these selective colleges in this day and age. I mean, it's just incredible, so anyway, just be careful about that, when you're spending your money and trying to decide what your students are going to do.
Yeah, I will say, I think your best dollar spent. So like at the University of Nebraska, they have something called the RAKES program. It's a combination of business management and computer science. It was started by an ex-Microsoft executive, and they have a summer program. And I think if you go to the summer program in the RAKES college with the intention of eventually applying to RAKES itself, they're going to be familiar. It's the same teachers and professors doing that. I think that will probably have a more positive impact than an unrelated camp too. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. So what are you finding regarding treatment of Schedule C income in case of freelancer working from home? This is growing numbers. And I'm wondering how colleges are addressing this explosion regarding financial aid. Well, I mean, number one, it's a legitimate way to do things, and what I think I'm hearing you saying, by the way, I'm not an accountant. I want to be very clear on that. Neither is Chuck. But it's a case where a person, because they're Schedule C, are keeping more assets back. In other words, you're not taking as much of a taxable income hit every single year with your business. It's legit. It's legit business practices. It's been, it's very legit as far as the way that you do things. Just be prepared, because colleges, of course, are going to do their due diligence. They're going to vet you out. They're going to look at both your personal tax return and your business tax return, and they're going to ultimately decide what your, in that case, what the CSS profile expected family contribution will be. I mean, you know, more so than maybe even the FAFSA itself. So.
Yeah, and on that last note, I just say if you get a financial aid award down the road and it mismatches against what you think your EFC should be out of cap, the first thing you'd want to do is call and ask them if they did get your tax return, did you exclude any expenses or anything that I included that the IRS allows that you guys discounted, and just see what they say. They'll answer honestly, so that would be relevant as well.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, you're so right, Chuck, because sometimes, you know, they can overlook things intentionally. So, hey, listen, that word of encouragement is to you parents from that other mom out there. Make sure that you just do it, folks. Make sure that you do everything that you need to do. Make sure that you use the MyCAP software. Make sure that you use the tool, and most importantly, make sure that you continue to come back and join us on these office hours. We love doing this. Trying to help you, coach you through these different things. We hope it's been helpful to you this evening. And, you know, we'll be back in 2 weeks where we'll again jump in here. But Chuck, is always great doing this with you this evening. And folks, thanks for being with us.
Appreciate it. Have a great weekend and evening, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.